Welcome to the September 18th, 2018 edition of the BitcoinNews.com daily radio show. We cover the biggest stories in Bitcoin, blockchain, and cryptocurrency every single day. This is your host, Space Marine, live from interstellar space beyond the heliopause.
It's kind of cold up here. This is Space Cadet. What is up, everybody? Thanks for listening. Bitcoin is at $6,200 at this point. Space Marine, take us through the analysis.
Affirmative Space Cadet. We're kind of doing back-to-back shows here. One was before midnight, one was after. So Bitcoin's price hasn't moved much. It was around 6,250 the last show. Now it's at 6,200. It's dropped ever so slightly. In the rest of the market, though, like Ethereum's having a really bad day. And this has been the trend for the alternative cryptocurrencies. Ethereum's down over 10%. At the same time, Bitcoin's down about like 3 or 4%. So the alternative cryptocurrencies, like when Bitcoin goes down, the alternative cryptocurrencies go down even more. Ethereum's actually down like 12%. It's below $200 again. Market cap sitting at $20 billion. So that's like slightly better than like a week or two ago when it was like $18 billion market cap. But it's gone down over 10%. And if Bitcoin goes down anymore, it's going to go down like another 10%. EOS is down over 10%. Litecoin's down 10%. Monero's down 10%. And remember, we talked about like Stratus Group. They issued a forecast for Monero to be like the number 2 cryptocurrency. That's not happening yet. Monero's sitting at $108, and it was like sitting at that when they issued that forecast, and it actually bumped. Like that forecast caused a lot of people to buy Monero, and whoever bought Monero thought they were making money, but it went back down to where it was. I'm not so sure Monero's gonna be the number 2 crypto. And in general, alternative cryptocurrencies are totally deflating a lot. Like Cardano's down 10%. Tron, IOTA is down 8%, Dash is down 7%, Bitcoin Cash is down 9%, XRP is down the same amount of Bitcoin, like 3.5%. So alternative cryptos are not doing good compared to Bitcoin. In general, the long-term trend has been the Bitcoin dominance percentage, the percentage of the Bitcoin market cap versus the rest of the crypto market cap. It's now up to 56.4%. I think it rose as high as like 57.5%, but it's way up. It was like 40%. Like earlier in the year, it dropped as low as like 37% at its worst point, something like that. So it's going way, way up. Bitcoin's becoming by far the most dominant currency. It's always been the most dominant, but it's getting more dominant right now. Because like when Bitcoin goes up, the other cryptocurrencies aren't rising as much as Bitcoin, but when it goes down, they go down way more than Bitcoin. So it's just getting more and more dominance for Bitcoin. Now, for our first story.
Bitcoin is not hurricane-proof. How can Bitcoin users prepare? Space Marine.
Affirmative Space Cadet. So we're not really live from interstellar space. We're in Florida, near Miami, and this is like the hot spot for hurricanes in the United States. I've been in the eye of multiple hurricanes. Most people cannot say that, and that's not even by chasing them. I have not chased hurricanes. I've chased tornadoes when I went to school in Wisconsin. But here, I have not chased hurricanes. They chase me. And we had Hurricane Andrew when I was like 1 year old. It wiped out. Hurricane Andrew hit southern Miami, and where it actually hit, it was a Category 5. And Category 5 is as high as they go. The wind speeds, like the wind gusts get up to 200 miles per hour. In the worst possible hurricane ever in history, the wind speed sustained might be 200, but the gust can be up to 200 in any Category 5. And literally, everywhere was like destroyed. All the trees were gone. All the houses were leveled. The Homestead Air Force Base is like an Air Force base, like built for like withstand enemy attacks and stuff. Like it totally was obliterated. Like a reinforced concrete structure was just obliterated, gone. It was like a nuclear weapon had gone off. And then there's more than that with hurricanes. Fortunately, I live a little inland, and everyone's smart enough with experience in Florida. Like a lot of people come to Florida or other coastal cities across the United States and the world, and they decide to get the beach house because they have some money. But they don't realize if you get a beach house in a hurricane zone, it's going to get washed away. This is how it works. The Mayans lived 20 miles inland from hurricanes. The Mayans were smart. They didn't have anything on the beach. They might have done some rituals on the beach and stuff, but they built their cities 20 miles inland, and that's about a safe distance to live, because if you live really close to the beach, like everyone within a few miles of the beach here in Florida, like they're going to get wiped away when a Cat 5 comes. Like literally the ocean comes roaring in. It could be like 10, 20, 30 feet high of water. Like literally the ocean itself comes inland. And the ocean's like has a different boundary during the hurricane pretty much. And the waves are on top of that 10 or 20 or 30 feet. There's waves that are like 20 or 30 feet on top of that. So literally entire houses are just gone, and they have evacuations of millions of people. Now, there's like literally every time there's a hurricane, like Hurricane Florence just hit North Carolina, and they had to evacuate millions of people because there's so many people living on the coast. So it's like a crazy situation for any hurricane. And that's just like a small amount of the coast that's evacuated. A very small amount of the coast has to evacuate, but it's like millions of people. And then hurricanes also have rainfall. The rainfall can be, in Florence was one of the most prolific rainfall makers in recent times, and this was only like a week or two ago. Florence hit North Carolina. There was 3 feet of rain in one spot, and like 2 feet of rain in a lot of areas. So they had 3 feet of rain, and all the rivers, like right now, the hurricane is gone. It's like dissipated pretty much, but the rivers are still cresting and swelling, and there's major floods inundating entire cities far away from where the hurricane actually made landfall because like so much water dumps into the system. So if you live like near a river or like in a river basin system and a hurricane goes over it, like there could be tremendous flooding for like long periods of time. And then like we talked about, the wind and the storm surge. And so how does this affect Bitcoin users? Well, obviously the wind and the storm surge and the rain, like any of those three can decimate the power system and the internet. Like Hurricane Wilma, I was in the eye of Hurricane Wilma, and that was like a Category 2. And it goes up to Category 5. So Wilma had winds of sustained about 100 miles per hour when it hit me. The power was out for over a month. Over a month, no power. The cell phone towers went down for like, they were up like sooner, probably like a week or two. The internet was down for like 2 months. The internet often takes longer to get up than the power. So Bitcoin users would just not be able to use Bitcoin if they don't prepare. But we're going to talk about how they could prepare. A Bitcoin user could just buy a satellite internet because a hurricane does not hit the satellite. So the satellite internet will work, but they also need power. And in Florida and like everywhere else with hurricanes, they get gas generators, and that's probably the best way to do it. You generate your own electricity with a generator. You pour gas in it. It's key, though. You must buy enough gas to power that generator, or you're going to lose power anyways. Because before a hurricane, the gas runs out, and then after a hurricane, it takes like weeks for the gas to come back. So you got to get like a lot of gas, like over 10 gallons of gas at least. If you could do it, like 100 gallons of gas would be good to ensure that you have enough energy for the entire...
A lot of them run on propane.
Thanks, Space Cadet. I did not know that.
Yes, they bury the tanks on their front or backyard, and they can run for weeks.
And that's like cleaner fuel, right?
Correct. And they perform a weekly, actually once a month, test. They turn on and off and make sure it works. It does by itself. So they're propane powered also.
That's a good idea for 2 reasons, because with generators, like they usually just sit idle because you have power coming from Florida Power and Light. You don't ever use your generator, so you might like turn it on after the hurricane and find out it doesn't turn on. And also, the gas generators emit like a tremendous amount of toxic fumes that like literally people have died because they don't know how to, like, because they'll put it inside their house or something and then they die in their sleep. God forbid. So yeah, you need a generator, you need satellite internet, and then it's even good because the generators are loud. Maybe the propane one isn't loud.
It's not loud at all,
But that's really expensive.
It is.
Yeah, but the gas generators are more affordable. Maybe for less than $1,000 you can get a good one. So they're loud though. So you want to buy like some battery packs, like big battery packs that could hold power for like a day. So you can turn your generator on and charge the backup, and then you don't have to keep it on all the time because you won't be able to sleep with that thing on. And also, you don't want to go to sleep with that thing running. It gets hot. It's an engine running. You don't leave your car engine running all the time. In the same way, you don't want to leave the gas generator running while you're sleeping. No one does that. They turn it off when they sleep. So you need some energy packs, or you won't be able to sleep anyways. It'll be too loud. And it also is outside, because you want to bring it back inside when you're sleeping. Because if it's outside, someone else that doesn't have power is going to steal it for sure. They'll hear it, and they'll be like, I want that generator, and they'll steal it. That's as simple as that. I remember I was looking for generators, because I worked at a barber shop. I actually heard a generator running and went to it because you could hear it from a distance, and people want that because like barely anyone has it. Barely anyone prepares enough to have the generator. But a Bitcoin user, a rugged Bitcoin user, would have a generator, a bunch of gas or propane, and a battery pack and satellite internet. And it goes beyond this, because imagine your computer could be destroyed so easily in a hurricane. A hurricane wind can blow up your house and collapse everything, and if your computer's in the house, it'll just get destroyed. If your house doesn't get destroyed by that, if you're in the storm surge zone, the water is going to come through the house and absolutely destroy your computer.
Lightning,
no. Space Cadet. Lightning is like, I mean, yeah, sure, but...
Surge.
Now, there's actually barely any lightning in a hurricane, and also it probably wouldn't go inside your house. But, so storm surge and rain would inundate your computer if you're in a flood zone at all. And most places end up being a flood zone unless you're at the top of the hill or something. So... your computer could get destroyed in so many ways. And let's say you're storing your Bitcoins on your computer, then you're going to lose them if you don't back it up. So, and then if you back it up, let's say you have a hardware wallet and then you even have a Polaroid photograph. One of the best ways to back up your Bitcoins is take a Polaroid photograph from the old Polaroids that have like no digital component, because it'll just print your private key on a photograph. You can store that really safe because that gives full access to the Bitcoins. You could do all of that, but it could all get washed away. Just the same as a computer, or rained on, or flooded, whatever. Or blown away. It could get blown away and end up in someone else's house that knows how to use Bitcoin. So what you want to do is get a safe. You want to get a waterproof safe that can withstand high pressures, because the house might collapse and like a beam could hit your safe, and you need to have it be able to withstand high pressure. So you need like the strongest safe and also completely waterproof, and that's kind of rare. But if you're going to be the ultimate rugged Bitcoin user that's going to be using Bitcoin during the whole hurricane, you need a safe. And you not only need the safe that's waterproof, you need to like anchor this thing into the ground. If you're in the storm surge zone, it's less for wind, because it would be hard to pick up like a big metal safe with the wind. It could still happen. Like in a category 5, it could still blow away. So you want to anchor this regardless with many feet of steel rods into the earth. So even if the storm surge comes completely through, your safe will be sitting there. And then on top of that, you want a really good lock on that thing that's like hard to break into and impossible to break into without like a really long password, pretty much. Not digital, because anything digital is going to get totally messed up. You want like a manual lock, but very complex manual lock, because you might have to leave your house for a long time and come back like a week or two later, because it'll be such a mess. So you don't want anyone coming to that safe and stealing your Bitcoins in the meantime. So just to go through the list, due to the wind, storm surge, and rain flooding in a hurricane, you want to have satellite internet. You want to have a generator. You want to have battery packs, so you don't have to keep the generator running all the time. You want to store your computer and your private keys inside of a safe that's waterproof and can withstand high pressure and is anchored many feet into the ground. I know it sounds insane and like a lot, but hurricanes are insane and a lot. So
if you can find your property, your lot.
What?
Sometimes when the hurricanes hit, you don't even know where you live. It wipes out a lot of the complex buildings, and I mean, that's what happens.
Actually, that's correct, Space Cadet. If you live on these coastal barrier islands, you should not be living in, and the Mayans would not live on. Like, there's been cases where like the island disappears because the hurricane storm surge is so strong it wipes away pieces of the island. So like your property literally could be underwater, but the safe would still be there. If you anchor it far enough into the ground, it'll be in the ocean, anchored into the ground. So yeah, that's how you Bitcoin proof yourself for a hurricane, because Bitcoin is not hurricane proof. A hurricane could be best described as a violent vortex of water. Like, if you've ever really been in a hurricane, it's like water spinning. Literally. Like, you can feel the water just spinning, and it's all water. And Bitcoin's digital, and digital stuff does not get along well with water. So, you gotta deal with tremendous pressure and amount of water in a hurricane, and you just gotta think like that. How can I deal with a ton of water and deal with stuff flying around and keep all my stuff safe? That's how you do it. Now for our next story.
Bitcoin, an obvious currency for the space age. Interesting. Space Marine, take us through this story.
Affirmative, Space Cadet. So Bitcoin would be a great currency for space, and probably the best currency. I'm going to go through this. And so we're not in that era yet where there's actually humans on other planets. It's going to probably start with the moon and then Mars, but then probably go everywhere. Some of the prime spots for human habitation are probably the moons of Jupiter. Jupiter's like its own little solar system. There's like a ton of moons that are like planets. And so is Saturn. Saturn has a bunch of moons. One of them is Titan and has like a lot of hydrocarbon fuels and an atmosphere. So there's probably going to be human habitation around Jupiter and Saturn, and then on Mars and the moon and every other place. And so this is going to change completely how currency is used. Because, well, first off, they don't really have good interplanetary internet in space right now. Like, they actually were going to launch the Mars Telecommunication Orbiter, and it was going to have an internet link between the Earth and Mars, but there's like no humans on Mars, so they scrapped it. But I think once there's human on Mars, they're going to be able to at least get internet to Mars, and this internet's going to have to be fast enough for Bitcoin, at least for Bitcoin's wallet to sync. If the wallet doesn't sync, it won't work. So it needs fast enough internet. It's probably quite possible. But compare this to fiat. Fiat, you require cash for that. Like, you could have credit cards and debit cards, and that's it in space, and then send fiat payments instantly. Fiat payments through, like, PayPal and stuff would work in space. Why not? But you would never have any cash, because the cost of launching cash into Earth orbit, and this is just Earth orbit, the cost of launching the cash beyond Earth orbit costs even more. So to get the cash into orbit of the Earth, to leave the surface and be in like close space, like inner space, because we have outer space, might as well call it inner space, like Earth orbit. A $20 bill weighs 1 gram. It will cost between $11 and $22 to launch a $20 bill into space. So launching cash into space is just not going to work. And so no one in space is going to have cash, pretty much, unless they start printing it on another planet. That's possible in the future. But, early on, or maybe forever, Bitcoin would be better. You could send Bitcoin into space for the same cost as you send Bitcoin to anywhere on Earth. So Bitcoin's a lot more efficient at getting into space. And this is important, because you could use the credit cards and the debit cards with fiat in space. But let's say the bank freezes your money. You're going to be on like another planet, and like someone on a different planet froze your money. What are you going to do? You can't do anything. So I think banks would be abusing the people in space for sure. They would be abusing them and taking their money. And let's say way in the future, there's going to be like other countries. There'll be a country on Mars, or many countries on Mars, many countries around Jupiter and Saturn. They'd be getting in wars with each other. And if your money's all locked up on Earth, because you can't get the cash off of Earth, then you're going to have a problem. They could freeze your money, the other nation, and then you just don't have money. And like in space, if you suddenly lost all of your money due to a bank freeze, you could die. So Bitcoin is something you could own. You could actually own that Bitcoin cryptographically with your private key in space. And so you could take your Bitcoin around space and use it to transact. Unlike credit cards or debit cards, you don't really own the money on that credit card or debit card. It's in the possession of a bank in a vault somewhere. If it is even in the vault. Most of the balances of banks are not backed by cash at all. Believe it or not, that's true. But you would want something that you want to actually own the money and hold it in your hand if you're in space and keep it with you. So Bitcoin's the best option. But it's interesting. Okay, first I'm going to go into precious metals before I go beyond this. Precious metals are another probably good thing in space, but for gold's like one of the best precious metals, probably the best. It costs 50% of the value of gold. Even though gold's like $1,200 an ounce, it costs like 50% of that to launch it into space. So that's like really not very good. I think gold and silver will be popular in space, but it's not as good as Bitcoin. It's just like a lot more fees to get the gold into space. But of course the gold price might be higher in space because of that. So that might work. But you can't send the gold long distance. You would have to take your spaceship with your gold and go somewhere else to actually buy something. Because in space, you're probably going to want to be able to send money to other planets and stuff. There's going to be a big economy out there. So Bitcoin's the only thing that's really going to work besides fiat for sending long distance. And Bitcoin's the only thing you could actually hold on to and actually own in your hands and send it long distances. So Bitcoin's just obviously the best currency for space. And like we talked about, the decentralization of Bitcoin makes it so you don't have to worry about being in a situation where you lose your money. Fiat money, you have to worry about that. That's always a likelihood. Like, they could just make a law one day where they steal all the money. Like, they'd be like, oh, we don't have enough money on Earth, and these people in space are doing so good, we're stealing all their money. I bet that's going to happen. That's a speculation, but that's probably going to happen. They'll be like, we're for the Earth. Earth first. And then they're just going to steal everything from space people. So, it's just better just to do Bitcoin from the beginning. But there are some problems. We talked about the interplanetary internet. If you do it between the Earth and Mars, it would probably work, but it requires powerful antennas on Earth, and then a very powerful satellite orbiting Mars for it to work. So that would work, though. But if you go further than that, like Jupiter and Saturn, it's like almost impractical. You might get a weak internet connection with like the most powerful antennas out that far. Like, they do have connections with the Voyagers and the New Horizons. Voyager is actually one of them went beyond the heliopause. So it's outside, it's in interstellar space, but still pretty close to the sun. It's not closer to any other star but the sun. And it's going to take like thousands of years to get to any other star. But they are still communicating with it weekly. Like, it's like bytes data that they can get back and forth. But basically, you would need a really powerful antenna infrastructure, like an extremely powerful space antenna. And you're also going to have to change Bitcoin's code to accept like radio transactions, because you can only use radio at that distance, really. Even in the future, radio is the best way because it has really long wavelengths. Anything with shorter wavelengths, like if it hits like a meteorite, it's going to get blocked. But like a radio wave could go right through like an asteroid. So they're going to be using radio waves with extremely powerful antennas. But then, let's say you accept a Bitcoin transaction from Earth through that, you're going to have an equally powerful antenna wherever you are on your planet, or even like in your city, to send it back to the Earth if you do any Bitcoin transactions. Because the Bitcoin blockchain is one blockchain, regardless of if people on different planets are using it. So you're going to have to beam the transactions like back to the network, which goes to Earth. So it's going to require extremely powerful antennas, and it's going to be broadcast across the entire solar system. If you go out of the range of the antennas or the broadcast range, Bitcoin won't work anymore. And I'm going to go into another point before I go into a point related to that. There's physical laws that kind of constrain what you could do. The speed of light is 300 million meters per second. That's really fast. It takes no longer than 0.13 seconds for a Bitcoin transaction sent on one side of the world to be received on the other side of the world. Exactly opposite sides of the world. 0.13 seconds. So that's pretty fast. It becomes a problem in space, though. Even at Mars, it takes 4.3 minutes for a Bitcoin transaction sent on the Earth to reach Mars. And it takes much longer. Like I said, there's going to be a lot of people living around Jupiter probably, and that's going to be like 35 minutes to get to Jupiter. And then 71 minutes to get to the Saturn moons, where there's probably going to be a lot of people too. So we're talking like a long delay between sending a Bitcoin transaction and receiving it between the Earth and Jupiter and Saturn. And Mars is pretty slow too at 4.3 minutes. And just a point immediately, mining is just not going to be possible if you're on any other planet. Like if you're in low Earth orbit or maybe on the moon, mining might be possible. But since whatever planet, and it's probably going to be the Earth, whatever planet that has the most hash rate, they're going to be finding the blocks all the time. So let's say you are mining on Mars and you find a block and you think you got the block rewards, you have to send that back to the Earth. And in the time it takes to go back to Earth, 4 minutes, someone else is probably going to find that block most of the time. And on Saturn and Jupiter, 100% of the time, if you mine a block up there, someone's going to find the block on Earth and your block will get orphaned. So mining is just not going to be possible. And due to the reasons of like lag time and the need for a powerful antenna, and that's going to cost a lot of money to send transactions, because there'll be a fee you have to pay to whoever owns that antenna probably to keep the antenna running. So it's probably more sensible to have like Bitcoin Jupiter, Bitcoin Saturn, Bitcoin Neptune, and then Bitcoin Beyond or something. So they're going to have Bitcoins on different planets, like the same Bitcoin, but they're going to hard fork it and use it on different planets, because on each particular planet, once you establish the internet around the planet, when there's like a bunch of humans living on the moons or on Jupiter, it'll be easy to establish the internet system over there. It's going to be a lot of work, but it'll be fast. It'll be fast enough, it'll be sensible. And Bitcoin Jupiter would work fine around Jupiter, but then it doesn't work when you're on different planets. Really, cryptocurrency is not, at least for now, and probably for the far foreseeable future, cryptocurrency only works on like one planet, really. Like we could try to use Bitcoin between Mars and the Earth for like big trades, for like arbitrage or something. But there's probably going to even be a Bitcoin Mars, because that 4 minute lag time's enough to like get rid of the miners, and there's people like they're going to want to mine Bitcoin on Mars. So they're going to have like Bitcoin Mars, Bitcoin Moon, stuff like that. It might not be called that. It'll probably be called like Moon Coin, Mars Coin, something. I think those already exist, but they'll make a real official one. But just to go back to the main point, there are some caveats because of the speed of light, the laws of physics, the weakness of sending a signal like really far away. We're talking like hundreds of millions of miles here, up to billions of miles. Tremendous distances. But regardless of that, cryptocurrency in general is the best thing to use in space, because you actually control that cryptocurrency with your private key. Cash, I guess you could print cash in space. There might be nations in space way in the future that are printing their own cash and having the fiat thing again. But in the beginning, cryptocurrency will be the only thing you could take with you efficiently into space as far as money goes. That's all we have for you today on the September 18th, 2018 edition of the BitcoinNews.com Daily Radio Show. Go to BitcoinNews.com for the full spectrum of Bitcoin, blockchain, and crypto news. If you read BitcoinNews.com, you will be an expert in no time. This is your host, Space Marine, signing out. I'm taking my Bitcoin private keys into space.
This is Space Cadet. Thanks for listening.
Adios, amigos.